please confirm in the chat window. Thank you, Rakshit, Seema, Dheeraj, Lakshman. Okay, how about others? So folks on the social media platforms, I hope you are able to hear me and see my screen. Okay, thank you, Bill. Okay, I see some confirmations over here on the social media handles too. Excellent. Thank you so much, guys, for confirming. And so, as part of this today's session, we'll be looking into our learning journey and we'll see how we can deploy the large language models to the production environment. Now, here we'll take up the approach of working in a general scenario where we'll perform the CI/CD automation with the help of GitHub Action, and we'll use the high level approach just like we have seen in the last session, but this time we'll be looking into it specifically from the large language model of OpenAI. So this OpenAI, so like the reason that we have used this ChatGPT because you know the kind of developments that we are seeing these days. So like by understanding as how to work with this OpenAI ChatGPT, so it will be easier for you to implement it in your project. So that's the reason that we have made use of the ChatGPT as the large language model for our today's hands-on. Okay, so in this hands-on, so it is divided into first two parts, I would say. First part is building the assistant. Okay, that's the first part. And the second part that we have got, it is about deploying that assistant. Okay, while doing the deployment, we'll make use of fast API, and using that fast API library, we will go ahead and create the deployment. Like we'll write the source code and we will create some method and we will go ahead and uh, create it. Now we'll do the testing in local system. And once that is done, we can quickly go ahead and Dockerize it and then deploy it with the help of Google Kubernetes engine. Okay, so the reason that I'm choosing this Kubernetes because it's not fixed to any cloud service provider. Like whatever the solution that you will be learning today, you can apply it. You can apply it on your like on any cloud vendor. You can apply the same code even on your on-premise infrastructure too. So that's the reason that I have made use of the Kubernetes as the one in order to go ahead and deploy our model. Okay, that's how our learning journey will be. So as I mentioned here in this session, so we'll be proceeding it in a hands-on manner. Now, wherever, uh, okay, so uh, okay, so I see few learners cannot see the screen. Okay, I hope you are able to do now, team. Thank you so much, Omnia and Nabith. Okay, yeah, so yeah, I hope everyone is able to see my screen now. Folks on our meeting link, Navneet, Omnia, Shravani. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, team. So we'll be proceeding ahead in a hands-on manner. And so wherever possible, I'll try to simplify it. If something is not clear, okay, please don't hesitate, ask the question. And I want to ensure that the learning that you are going to have from this session should be of useful to you, especially when you think about implementing such large language model based solution in your production environment. Okay, so let's get started, everyone. So let's start with the first part. The first part is about building the OpenAI assistant. So here, let's go ahead and build the same. So in order to do that, so let me start by logging into my OpenAI platform. Now, before I go jump directly into this hands-on part, so I just want to have a quick check-in. So, folks, I'm doing this hands-on by assuming that you're aware of what is ChatGPT and what is generative AI. So, I hope the folks who are on our call is aware of what is ChatGPT and what is generative AI. So if you're someone who is new to this generative AI or ChatGPT, so can you please let me know? So if you're aware of this ChatGPT and this generative AI, just confirm as well so that we can skip that part if all of you are aware of this generative AI and what is the role of this ChatGPT. Okay, Nabheet has confirmed. Okay, he's aware. Okay, Omnia is aware. Okay, Rakshit is aware. Sridhar, he's aware. Lakshmikant. Okay, Samyukta, Shashidhar. Okay, I can see most of the folks who are joined on the call is aware of generative AI and what exactly is the ChatGPT. I can see few learners who are saying that I'm very new to ChatGPT. Okay, let me just simplify it. So in order for simplifying it, okay, so you can think of it in this way. ChatGPT, as you know, it's a model that we have got where you will put the input, which is the text. Okay, you will insert the text, and based on the pattern that you have mentioned in the text, it is going to generate the content. Okay, that's the overall idea of this ChatGPT or the generative AI model. It is capable of generating the new content based on the pattern that you have specified. Okay, so that's the overall idea about this generative AI, and more specifically, we'll be making use of a generative model which is called as the GPT model from the OpenAI team. So that would be our agenda. Now, with that being said, let's take a look into the prerequisites. So if I want to build such model, first thing that I need to do is I need to have the API enabled for me. So in order to have the API enabled, I'll have to log into my OpenAI platform by logging into the site platform.openai.com, and let me log in over here for this portal. Okay, so once you're logged in, so this is how your page would look like. So you've got documentation, API reference, and so on. So what you have to do is you have to start by generating the API key. I'll say API key, and from here I would go ahead and generate a new API key for this session. So I'll say create new secret key, and I'll just mention some details. I'll say live demo. Okay, and when I click on this secret key, this is going to generate a new secret key. So a secret key will be generated for me, and I can use this secret key for my coding purpose. Okay, that's the overall idea about generating such secret key. Now that I have generated the key, let me go ahead and start creating an assistant. We'll build a simple assistant. First, I'll take you through the assistant API that we have got in OpenAI. We'll build a simple assistant. We'll test it locally, and then we'll use that code and we'll try to create it as a Python script. And from there, we will build a project. Okay, so to start with, let me launch the Jupyter Lab that I have here in my local system. So I'm just logging in to my Jupyter Lab. Okay, I've logged into the Jupyter Lab. So what I'll do is I'll start by creating a new Python notebook. So here I'll start by creating this new Python notebook. Now, in order to work and especially in order to code and interact with this OpenAI, so OpenAI models, so first we need to perform the installation of this OpenAI library in our local system. Okay, so that's the common thing. Just like you would go ahead and do the installation for any package. So here in this case also, we'll have to go ahead and perform this installation. So I'll start by running the command pip install, and here the library that I want to install is OpenAI. So let me rename this ChatGPT demo. Okay, so I would go ahead and execute this. So this is going to take care of the yeah. So this would go ahead and take care of the installation. In my case, it has performed the installation. Okay, so this is looking good. So the OpenAI has been uh, OpenAI has been installed. Now what I'll do is, so the API secret that I have created earlier, so I'm going to save it inside the Python file for now. Okay, we'll securely save it in a later stage in our GitHub repository since we are getting started. So what I'll do is I'll create a Python file and I'll name this as config.py. So this is like a configuration file, Python script. So I'll be maintaining all the required variables over here and I will be importing it in my notebook. For now, I'll just say API key and I would go ahead and save the API key which I have copied earlier. Okay, that's how I'll be storing this config.py. Now what I'll do here in my notebook interface, I'll just go ahead and import that config. So I'll do one thing. I'll say from config, I'll directly import API key. Now, if I want to make use of this API key, I can directly call this API key variable. So that's how I would be using this API key in our code. So we'll change it as we progress. But for now, for our experimentation, this is the process that I'm going to follow. Okay, so that's how I would be doing right now. So I have imported this API key. Next, once this is done, so next thing that I will do is I'll start by, let's do one thing. Let's take the help of the documentation page itself. So platform.openai.com. And here, this GPT model has various capabilities. We have got the text generation capability, and we have the uh, function calling capability, embeddings, fine tuning, image generation. So like this, we've got various capabilities that are available, and we also have the assistants API. So when we say assistants API, since this is our interest for today's session, so this assistant API, what it does is it will allow us to build the AI assistants within our own application. Okay, so what we can do is we can use the GPT model, that is the model that is powering this chat GPT, and we can use it to build our own assistant as well. Now, in order to get started, so it mentions there are four common steps that we follow at a very high level. So the first thing is we'll have to create an assistant in the API. We'll have to create a thread, add the messages to the thread, and once that is done, we will go ahead and run the assistant. Okay, we would go ahead and run the assistant to trigger response, and this will call the relevant tools. So that's the overall idea of this assistants API. Now, since we are working programmatically, so here the documentation page says Python. So the way that we have to do is, so first we'll have to create an assistant with the required name, instruction, and tools that I want to specify, and the model. Okay. Now, when you are working, if this is confusing to you, what you can do is you can actually make use of the playground. So we have a capability that's called as playground. So this playground, what it does is, so this will help me to give the visual interface of working with this assistants API. So let me show you this playground and then we'll use the same concept in our coding as well. So if I open up this OpenAI playground, so OpenAI playground is an interface that is provided to us where we can go ahead and uh, choose the various API and work with it and create something in the visual manner only. So in my case, I've selected the assistants. Okay, we'll have to specify the assistant name. So for now, I'll say create assistant, which means I'm creating a new assistant. So this has generated some random assistant ID. Okay, now while creating the assistant, so let's look into the important things that is expected by this OpenAI playground. See, some of the important things that is expected is the name. So I'm going to mention the name as event helper. Okay, that's the name that I would provide, and we can provide the instruction. So when we have learned about the generative AI and the way this chat GPT works is based on the prompt that we send, the response from the generative model will be decided. So this everyone are aware of it, and we have started using this chat GPT in our day-to-day life. Now, how well this chat GPT responds, or how good the chat GPT responds to our prompt, is dependent on the detailed instruction that we specify. So instruction are the guideline that we specify to the chat GPT. Okay, this like it will be this yeah, like instruction is the one that we specify something for this chat GPT, which using that, okay, using that as a guideline, so it is going to generate the response. So that's the core idea of this instruction. So which means here, if you want the like the system to behave in a specific manner while it is generating some response, we can actually mention it under the instruction. Like I'll just give you an example. I want this assistant to be as funny as possible. So I'll say create funny responses to the users while answering. Okay, this is what I'm mentioning right now. So create funny responses to the users while answering. This is the instruction that I'm specifying, assuming that this is the bot, this is the type of assistant that I want to use it for my end users. Now, apart from specifying the instruction, the other thing that we have to mention right now is the model. Okay, so the model is nothing but the model that I want to use. Like just for the example purpose, I'll make use of GPT 3.5 Turbo, or I can make use of GPT-4. Just for the example, maybe I'll just use GPT 3.5 only, which we are already aware of, which we are working in our day-to-day basis. Okay, so that's the model that we have specified. And other things that you have to remember if you're creating any assistant is, okay, you'll have to mention what kind of tools that you want to enable. So we can enable the interpreter, we can enable the retrieval, and we can also enable the files as well. Okay, so all those things will be made available over here. Okay, so here we'll have to enable the tools and specify the files in the user interface so that we can create the assistants. So that's the core idea of working with this UI. So before I take you there over here, so are you with me till here? The importance of the instruction and how we have written. So are you with me till here? So please confirm by typing as yes, if you're clear till now. Okay, thank you, Nabit. Thank you, Dheeraj. Thank you, Lakshman. Thank you, Srinath. Okay, thank you, Rakshita. I see a question from Raghu. I joined late. Will it be available on YouTube? So, team, all the sessions recording so will be made available on our website. Let me share you the link. So all the source code that I'm using and uh, these sessions recording so will be available on our site. I'll just ping the link over here in the chat window. You can go ahead and bookmark this site. You can just join that link. If you're already aware, that's fine. If not, just bookmark this site and register yourself so that you'll be able to access the sessions recording and the code. So let me share on the social media platforms too. Okay, so thank you, Omnia. Thank you, Josie. So thank you so much, team, for confirming. Okay, so let's now that you are familiar about the important things, let's proceed ahead. See, I've mentioned the name of my assistant. This has generated an assistant ID. Okay, this is the ID that we have to mention in our code if I want to use it. And so here we'll make use of the interpreter. Now the interpreter that we will be making use of the retrieval. So we'll make use of the retrieval. Okay, so it says retrieval is not available for the GPT 3.5. I'll make use of, let's make use of the GPT 4 Turbo only. Okay, I'll make use of GPT 4 Turbo preview and I'll choose the tool which is a retrieval one. So let's understand what is this retrieval. So when I say retrieval, retrieval basically is uh, like retrieval is basically an ability where it will help us, okay, where it will help us to retrieve the data from the file. Okay, it will basically help us to retrieve the data from the file. Now the question is, what is the file that I want to provide? Let's do one thing. Let's provide a dummy file for our learning purpose. Okay, I'll go ahead and share an event information. So there's an event that's happening tomorrow. So that's the essential math for AI. So here in this session, we will be going ahead and discussing about mathematics and the core idea about the key concepts that you need to know from the mathematics for working with AI-based application. So I would invite everyone to join the tomorrow's session as well. So what I'll be doing for the demonstration purpose, I'll be saving this web page locally in my system. Okay, I'll say essential math. Okay, so this will be saving it as a HTML file. Now I would go ahead and use this HTML file. Okay, I'll use this HTML file as a source code so that I can go ahead and ask the questions for my assistant. So I'll come back to my playground and here there is something called as files. I'll click on add. Now here I'm going to perform the attachment of essentialmath.html. So this is going to attach the recently downloaded file. Okay, I've attached this recently downloaded file, that is essential math. Now what it means, okay, whenever I send any input for this model, so this is my assistant, which is the GPT model. I've mentioned the name as event helper. Now whenever I send any prompt, let us assume that I would mention the prompt details about what is the name of the event. I'll keep it simple. What is the name of the event? Now, if I mention this as a prompt to my model, okay, now this prompt will be reaching this model and this assistant, okay, this assistant will make use of my source, that is the file name is basically essentialmath.html. So I've got an HTML file. This file will be read. Okay. So once it reads that file, okay, once it reads that file, then it is going to understand the content and then it will find the answer for that question. And then while it is answering to that question, okay, while it is answering to that question, it will have to go ahead and create the funny responses. So that is how I would expect that this model to behave, or that is how I would expect that this model to work, team. Okay, that is how I would expect it here, team. So now that you are clear about our expectation, so let's go ahead and uh, uh, let's go ahead and work with the same. So here in this scenario right now, okay, so we have this assistant created and I have the assistant ID generated and everything in place. Now let me just go ahead and mention my prompt. I'll just say, what is the name of the event? This is the input or the prompt. I'll click on run button. So once I hit the run button, so an input is going over here. So run instruction is create funny responses to the users. That is what is happening in the backend. So just look at the response, guys. It says the name of the event is Essential Math for AI, and it's happening on Sunday, that is tomorrow at 5 p.m. IST, and it's going to be a blast off into the cosmos of AI. Buckle up for some math magic. So if you look into the event page, nowhere I have mentioned that that's what the event is or that's what the event is all about. But since I had mentioned the instruction, so it is tailor making, it is creating the response as per the instruction that I have mentioned for my model. And it is also using the file that I have mentioned over here as a context when it is generating the response. Okay, so that's how easy it is. I can create my own assistant using the OpenAI Playground feature. So you can directly make use of this, and whatever the assistant ID that has been generated, you can use it in your code and work with it. Alternatively, what you can do is you can go ahead and do all these same stuff that I've done just now by creating the code, by following the official documentation, and from there also we can do the same. So you've got two methods. One method you have now understood how to create the assistant, ChatGPT assistant using the playground, and how you can specify your own file over here as a context in generating the response. Add the instruction. You have already learned about the architecture. How does the prompt architecture would look like? You know, the instruction is one of the important part of that prompt architecture, which we have learned in our last workshop. So using this, I'm generating the response. Okay, so I hope it's clear to you guys. So I'll take a pause here. So is this clear how this LLM is working and how it is generating the output? So please confirm in the chat window and the social platforms wherever you have joined. Okay, thank you, Omnia. Thank you, Nabheet. Thank you, Dakshayani. Thank you, Lakshmi. Okay, thank you, Sridhar. Okay, thank you, Prakash. I'm glad that you are able to follow. Lakshmi, okay, says it's great. Okay, thank you, Lakshmi. Okay, Nabeed says, can we also provide the context or file on the runtime also? So, no, it's not possible. The reason is, if you want to provide a context, okay, you like the file specifically file. So you have to create a file ID. I mean, in the runtime means you'll have to get a file, and in the runtime itself you'll have to upload that file into the OpenAI. So I'll show you. Okay, whatever the file that I've just uploaded, the essential math.html, it is actually available under the file section. So if I go under this file section, see the files has been uploaded to my OpenAI, and this file ID is being referred in the backend to get the context. Now, if you want to generate the new file, then you'll have to upload the same file in a programmatic manner, get the latest file ID and send that as a context. So like when I show you the coding, I think it would make more sense, Nabeed. Okay, when we write coding, I think you will get some more practical ideas as how you can implement it for your use case. Will, in our case, this context is fixed. Now, there are some more questions about how does it connect to my vector database? Well, think of it. See, this is a file that I have got, which is a very small file. Now, if you've got a large data, then obviously you can make use of the vector database and use that to provide the context. So I have not considered the vector database for this workshop, considering its own complexity and considering the separate explanation. I've just kept it simple where we are providing the context for the file from the directly the file. So if you want to learn more about the vector database and how we would implement such solution, you can let me know, team. We can definitely have that as part of our agenda in our future workshops. Okay, so any other questions, team? Okay, definitely Samyukta, we can add it. And Lakshmi says, okay, so uh, Lakshmi says it's really helpful. Okay, thank you, Lakshmi. Okay, there are a few more questions. Where can I get the access to the previous workshop videos? It's the same link, Josie, that I had shared earlier. You can access from that same link that I shared earlier. So that will have the date-wise, the various workshop that we have conducted. Okay. So Nabeed says it will not be still real time as it will take time to process. That's correct, Nabeed. Perfect. Okay. So now that you're clear as how it is working, so I'll just take you through at a very high level again. We'll construct the same with our API, like with our coding way as well, because we want to create it as an application. So that's one of the main reason, team. Okay. So let's go ahead and work with the same. So now that we have created it, okay, we have the assistant. So you have seen to create an assistant, we can mention the name, we can mention the instruction, model name, okay, the task or the tool that we want to provide, and the file for the context. Okay, so these are the things that we specify in order to create the assistant. Now that you have seen practically how everything is connected, let's do the coding. So here I have already created the API key. Now, first thing that I have to do is I have to create the instance for the OpenAI client. So let me just go ahead and do that. So in order to do the same, so I'll start by importing in this way. I'll say from OpenAI, I'll import OpenAI. And I would say client is equal to OpenAI. Okay, and here it will expect the API key. I'll say API key is equal to API key. So the API key that I have generated in my account, I'll have to mention it over here for this API key argument. So once that is done, so I'll be creating this client object, and this is what I would be using it to interact with this OpenAI platform that I have got. Next, in order to create my own assistant, I need to have a file. So which means I need to upload a file and I have to generate the file ID. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, excuse me. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is I'll be requiring the file. So let me just use the same file which I've showed you for the demonstration. So essentialmath.html, that's the same HTML file. Okay, it contains the data. Oh, I've closed it by accident. Okay, so we have created the same. So what I'll do is I'll start by uploading a file. I'll say client dot files dot create. Okay, so in order to upload the file, so I'll say my file is equal to, I'll just open the file that I've got. So in my case, it is essentialmath.html file, and I'll open this in the read binary mode. Okay, now once I open this file, now I'll also have to mention the purpose over here. I'll say purpose is equal to assistants. So I'm uploading this file, that is essentialmath.html. Let's do one thing. Let me rename this. Okay, this will help you to clarify that this is a separate file. I'll call it as v2. Okay, so I've just updated the file name. So I'm going to upload this file. I'll read this file and I'll upload this file to my OpenAI platform. Now once I execute this, this file will be read and this file will be uploaded to my OpenAI platform. So if I come back to my OpenAI platform and go to the files, you can see that a new file has been uploaded. So process is same. So whatever I was doing earlier, I'm just doing it programmatically. That's what I'm currently doing right now. Okay, so that's what I'm currently doing. So now once this is done, okay, now once this is done, let's proceed with the next step. So I've uploaded the file. Now the next thing is create an assistant. So to create an assistant, we can make use of the code that is present in the documentation. I'll copy that code and I'll paste it right here and we'll modify it. I'll mention as LLM deploy demo. So since we are in the session of LLM deploy, I'm just mentioning my assistant name as LLM deploy demo. Then the instruction. So here I can mention my own instruction. So I'll just mention the instruction. This is the system instruction that we specified earlier in the user interface. It's the same over here. So I would mention the instruction as you are an event helper and you will provide funny answers while answering. Okay. Now for the tools, if you remember, there were various tools that were available like the code interpreter and the other tools, right? So here the for our use case, the tool that I'll be using, I'll mention it as Retrieval. So you can refer to the OpenAI documentation APIs to get to know the same. And when I'm creating the assistant, I'll also have to mention the model. Now, apart from model, to provide the context for this assistant that we are creating, we'll also have to mention the file IDs. So I'll say file IDs is equal to, I'll just mention my uploaded file dot ID. So in this way, I would go ahead and create an assistant as well. So if I execute this, an assistant will be created with the name as LLM demo, and this will get the context of the file ID that I have mentioned earlier. And this is the system instruction. Now, if I go back to my platforms and click on the assistant, you can see that a new assistant has been created. And if I open this, whatever the configuration that I have sent programmatically is available right here. It has mentioned the file as a context, and it is the tool of retrieval, and the system instruction is also provided. Okay, so that's how easy it is to do the same thing in a programmatical manner. Now, once that is done, so we like the next thing is we have to create the conversation thread. So whenever, okay, whenever we are working and interacting with this chat GPT, okay, so in such scenarios, it is important that we create a thread. Okay, it is important that we create a thread, and the best practice that is suggested by the OpenAI team is, so for each conversation you need to create a new thread. So the way that to create the thread is client.beta.threads.create, and this is going to create a new thread for us. So for each conversation you have to create a new thread. So in our learning journey, I'm expecting that the chatbot that I'm building, I'm expecting that there's only one conversation that would happen. Now, if you're someone who wants to have multiple interactions, you need to find a way to, for each and every user that you're getting it in the front end, you will save the thread ID in your database and retrieve it whenever the same user is trying to have a conversation with the chatbot. So that is something from the infrastructure standpoint that you need to remember, team. Okay, that's something that you need to remember from the infrastructure standpoint when you are implementing it for the production use case where you will have thousands of concurrent users who are using your application. So the code that I'll be showing you right now, you can just adjust it to ensure that the each and every user will have the thread generated and it will be stored in the database. So once you see the code, it will become much clearer to you. So you can use that as a template when we are working. So for now, I'll create a thread. It is asking me to create a thread. So I'll say create a thread. So this will go ahead and create a thread for me. Now, once the thread has been created, so the next thing is we have to send the messages through a thread. So what it says, a message is the one which contains the text. So we can also add any files. Okay, if the user wants to upload any, we can also allow that as well. And the user needs to be and it says that messages needs to be added to a specific thread. That means each and every conversation that is happening, to identify this is happening from that single person or that specific person, so you have to ensure that. So you have to be added to that specific thread. That's the overall idea here, team. Okay, so here we'll go ahead and add the message to the thread. So if you, I'll just copy this and I'll show it to you to help you understand what is happening. See, on top I have created the thread light. If I just display this thread variable, I have got the thread ID. So this thread ID has been generated. Now, as a user, if I want to send something, so we'll be calling the method of create, that is messages.create. We'll have to send in that for this thread ID, role is user. That means the user is interacting with the chatbot and the user is asking a question. This is nothing but the prompt. So here I would mention as what is the name of the event? It's the same question that I had asked earlier. It's basically the prompt. Okay, I've got a prompt over here, and this prompt says that what is the name of the event. Okay, so that is what is happening right now. Okay, so that's what is happening. So we have mentioned the content, that is what is the event name, and we have mentioned the user. Okay, now if I just execute this for this thread ID, the user has sent in this prompt. Now the best part is you can monitor everything in the OpenAI page. So if you come to the threads, okay, sometimes it will take a while to refresh. Let me do one thing. I think it will take a while. Sometimes it will not load as well. Let me do one thing. We'll just proceed with the execution, and once we proceed and once we come back to this page and if we refresh it, I think it will be available. So I have I've just mentioned the message over here. Okay, I've created this message object, and this message object uh, basically says the prompt. Now, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and perform the run. Okay, so here what it says is for my assistant to respond to the user message. Okay, for my assistant to respond to the user message, we have to create the run. So by doing this, this will make the assistant read the thread and decide whether to call which tools. Like in our case, it's retrieval only. So I have mentioned as retrieval, and then it will go ahead and perform the further step. Okay, and remember to do all those things, guys. I think I forgot to mention you need to have the balance in your account. Okay, so you need to have some balance in your account because all these work is chargeable based on the number of tokens that you're sending and the number of tokens that are getting generated. Ensure that you have some enough credit balance to perform this practice. I think minimum recharge is 5 USD. That was one question that I had got. So you can just recharge it for the minimum amount and you can quickly get started in experimenting with this chat GPT. Okay, so let's come back. Uh, yes. So now we'll go ahead and run this assistant. So I'll say run. Okay. So this is going to run the assistant. So what it will do is this is going to respond to the user message. In order to respond, I'll have to create this run. So I'll say run is equal to client.beta.threads.run.create. Thread is my thread ID and the assistant ID, which is basically what I had created earlier. See this assistant, if I display this variable of assistant, it has got its assistant ID. So this is basically the same assistant ID that you would see it over here. And if you look into the screen, okay, so since I have executed the run right now, at least after a while you are able to see the various threads, I think. Yeah, This was the thread which mentioned as what is the name of event. And if you look into the previous one example, this is another thread which I had used the GUI, and it also says what was the response. So you can use the thread in the OpenAI platform to for the debug purpose and just to see how the output is getting generated. Okay, that's how you can actually get such information. So we have everything here. So we have created the message. Now I'll perform the run. Before I do that, I can add some special instruction as well. Now this is optional. If you want to add any special instruction, you can go ahead and mention those as well. In my case, let me just remove it. Okay, I'm not going to mention any. But if you want to add any special instruction, then in such scenarios, you can just mention it. That will be considered as other additional context whenever the model is generating the output. So once the run is complete, so the next thing that we have to do is we'll have to check if the run is completed or not. Okay, we can check the run status by mentioning the run object. This will retrieve, and if I say run.status, the status is completed. So if the status is completed, okay, then what we can do is we can get the response as well. Okay, what we can do is we can actually get the response. The way that we can get the response is, so here from this run, okay, so if I want to get the list of messages, I can get the list of messages by calling the client.beta.threads.messages, and from here I'll have to call the method that's called as list, and I'll list down all the messages for this specific thread ID. So now if you look into this, it has generated some output for me, and more specifically I'll be interested in the data key. Okay, inside this data key, so I'll be interested in the uh, first one, that is basically the content. So from this content, if you look at it, you'll also be able to look into the response. Here the value says the name of the event is Essential Math for AI, scheduled over here. So get ready to mathematically mingle with AI, and it has generated some response as well. So this is basically the technical response that I'm looking at. So let me just write the code to make it simple for you. So we can write a simple logic in this way, where I would go ahead and say that go ahead and check on the run status. If it is completed, display the latest message. If I just execute this, it basically filters out the latest response from the model. So what we did just now is we have just now created our own assistant, provided the context, and we have created a code which can help us to generate the response from this ChatGPT model. How cool is this, guys? So you have learned two things now. So you know how to create a code is using the platform, and you have now seen how to work with it in a programmatically as well. So you have actually built, okay, you have actually built the application from like built a way to create your own assistant, and you have the code right now. So with this, we come to the end of our first part of today's agenda, that is developing the ChatGPT based application using the GPT model, directly interacting with the model from the OpenAI. All right, guys. So let me take a pause since we have completed the first part, and I want to see if you have got any questions that you have till now. Okay, one common question that I'm getting from now is like, where can I get the sessions recording and how do I access it? So let me share the link again, team. So I've reshared the link to you in the chat window. So this is the link where you can access the sessions recording and code. So since the code is in progress, once the session is completed, I'll be uploading the code in this site. You can check out that site and you'll be able to access it. So go ahead and register it, and you can access the sessions recording. See, this is the link when you open it. So for each and every date, So there is a recording that is made available over here, and there's also the code that has been uploaded. So even once today's session is completed, the date along with the code and the session's recording will be made available to you in the portal. Okay, now any questions, team, on the first part? If you're clear till now, please confirm by typing as all good. So Shravani says, can you please share any resources to become Python full stack engineer? So Shravani, the application that we are building, it's actually the end-to-end application. Definitely, maybe I can share some other resources as well, where we have some machine learning based applications. I can share those resources too. Okay. And folks, if you're clear till now, okay, please confirm by typing as all good. And if you're able to follow along with me, or if you have got any question, feel free to let me know. Don't hesitate. Okay, thank you, Naveed, and thank you, Diksha, for the wonderful feedback. I'm glad that you're able to follow. Thank you, Omnia. Thank you, Shravani. Thank you, Lakshmi. Okay, thank you, Sudhir. Okay, thank you, Dheeraj. I see two Dheeraj. Okay, one from LinkedIn. Okay, and another from our Zoho meetings. Okay, thank you, Desai. Will you share the meeting in Meetup app? Okay, Murthy. Uh, Thank you, Murthy. Okay. So I'm not having, I don't think so. We can share it in that Meetup app. So the recording, as I mentioned, I can share that link even in the folks who have joined from the Meetup group. Yeah, you'll get the message as well with that link of where you can access the session's recording. Okay. Yeah, definitely, Murthy's. Oh, okay. So the you can register to the portal that I mentioned earlier, Murthy. So there you can actually get that link. So I'll be sharing that same link again once the session ends. You'll have it as a reference, Murthy. Definitely, Josie. Okay, thank you so much, team, for confirming. And thank you guys for being so interactive and asking some amazing questions. Now let's do one thing. Let's take a quick break of 2 minutes and then we'll regroup after 2 minutes and look into the deployment part. Okay, let's meet after 2 minutes. Okay, so I hope everyone is back. So let's move on to our part two, that is creating an application which is based on Python. And so, team, let's talk about the architecture at a very high level, what we are expecting. Okay, so let me just give you that uh, background, and from there we'll go ahead and build the same. Okay, so see, the expectation is okay. So the expectation for our application right now is, so I'll have the model. Okay, so I'll have a model that I'll be creating, or I'll be creating my application. So let's assume that this is my chat GPT application, which will help the user on the event. Like there's an event that is present, then I'll call it as the event helper. So this is my event helper, which is my chat GPT application. So what it should have is, it should have a capability to get the input from the user. So the end user will send in the input, which is basically the prompt. So the prompt will be sent to my model, that is my ChatGPT application. Now this is the custom application, which is nothing but the custom assistant that we have created. And whenever this prompt is received by this custom chat GPT that I have built, so this custom chat GPT should call the OpenAI service. Okay, this is, let's call this OpenAI. So obviously this application should be interacting with the OpenAI, and it has to generate the response. Okay, so once it does that, it will also go ahead and send back the response to us. Okay, send us back the response to the application, and this application should then go ahead and generate the response to the user. Okay, so I'll say, let's assume that this is the user. Let's say this is the user. Now the user is going to generate some prompt, right? Now in this case, the user will get the response. Okay, that is the kind of process that we are going to expect right now. So we are expecting that the chat GPT, like the user will send the response, and this response is received by our application, and this application will in turn interact with OpenAI platform, because it uses the context, the application that I have built, and then the ChatGPT application should be able to generate the response to the user. So that's the high level diagram of the end goal that we are trying to achieve. So in order to do that, let's take a look into the technical stack. So here, in order to deploy our application, so I'll be making use of fast API library. Okay, I'll be using this fast API library, and by doing this I'll be able to expose my application. So now when the user sends in the prompt, it could be a front-end interface. From that front-end interface, this is going to make a post signal action. It is going to create the post signal action over here on my chat GPT model. Okay, it will create the post signal action on the chat GPT model. Now once it does that, okay, once it does that post signal on that chat GPT, so this in turn will interact with the OpenAI, and this will have a method which will return the response. Okay, that's how the overall entire application that I'll be designing. So I'll be making use of this fast API library, get the input, perform the post action for the prompt that is being sent from the user, and return the response to the end user. So if you have understood this diagram, then you will be clear with the implementation, guys. Okay, so I'll just uh, design the code. Okay, so for the easier working, so let me go ahead and do that. So let's consider, uh, let's go ahead and get started. So I've already created some files. Okay, in some cases I'll be just using those as it is. Okay, In some cases, I'll be just going ahead and like for the easier processing, in some cases, I'll just go ahead and copy paste some codes as well. Okay. So the main idea is simple. Since you have now understood the diagram, the same thing that I'll be following in the implementation. First, I'll start by creating my Python script file, which is the one, my fast API application. I'll call it as main.py. So here for this main.py, so I'll write the code. So first thing is I'll do the installation. Let me do one thing. So here for the ease of working, I've just copy pasted my fast API code. Here it says that from fast API, import the fast API, and to generate the HTML response, I'm importing the HTML response. And to perform the activity of uh, data validation when we are getting, so I'm making use of the Pydantic library. And since we are making use of OpenAI, I'm just importing the OpenAI too. And to get the API, okay, in order to get the API, so for now, since I've saved it inside the configuration file, I'll use the same code that I have used earlier for now. Okay, I would just go ahead and use the same code as of now, just for our local testing. Then I'll show you the best way of doing it in the production environment. Okay, for now I'll say from config import open API key, and this API key will be used by my assistant and for the assistant ID. Okay, so see, if I want to build my application, that means if I want my application to interact with OpenAI, I would require two things. One is API key, which is for my authentication purpose, and the other one that I would require is basically, okay, the other one that I would require is the assistant ID. These are the two things that I would require. Okay, so what I'll do is we'll get the assistant ID from the OpenAI platform. So I'll go to the assistants. This is the latest assistant that I want to have it. So I'll just copy this ID. Okay, and I'll be saving it in my configuration file. So I'll just say this is the API key, which I'll remove it later. Okay, assistant ID, and I'll just save the value for my assistant ID. So if you look into my main.py file, so I'm reading the assistant ID from my configuration file. Now I've mentioned some details which says that this is ChatGPT powered assistant, an app to help people on event side. Okay, and I've created some body for the base model. And when someone visits the home page, I'll just mention as welcome to ChatGPT powered assistant. And there is a predict method. So which means if someone sends the text to the generate method, he or she is going to get the response. That means here when I'm sending the prompt, this is going to trigger the generate method. It's going to call the generate method. Okay, now once I create this generate method, like for that generate method, I'll get whatever the text that I would get, I'll be capturing in the prompt. So remember what I have mentioned earlier. So for each and every conversation, you have to create a new thread, right? So here I'm creating a new thread. For this thread, I'm going to mention the prompt that I'm getting from the end user. I'll perform the run. Okay, so I can mention the system instruction too if I want. Okay, I can go ahead and mention the system instruction by mentioning the thread ID, assistant ID. So this is basically the additional instruction. I'll just remove it since we did not use it at that time. And then there is a while loop over here which will check whether the status is completed. If yes, it will return the text. And I'm running it on the port of 80. Okay, that's what I have done. So to ensure that this would work, I'll create a requirements.txt file. This will have the various requirements like various libraries that I'll be using. So in my case, OpenAI, Fast API, and UVCon, these are the requirement. So once everything is present, I can quickly go ahead and test out. So I'll just uh, Let me go to that folder. So here I've got requirements.txt file present. So I'll just say pip install -r requirements.txt. So this will install the installation is done by referring to my requirements.txt file. Now I'll just say python main.py. So once I run this, this should start my fast API application in my local system. So if I go to localhost port 80, it says that welcome to ChatGPT powered assistant. So what I have just did is I've created an application locally with the help of the fast API. Now let me test out whether it is able to work or not. So since I'm making use of this fast API, guys, it is very easier for us to check the documentation. I can say /docs and I can play around with the documentation. So it basically says there is a generate method. I can actually test it in the screen itself. So I click on try it out, and for the text place I'll say uh, let's see, okay, who is the let's see, what do we have here? Okay, for this event, okay, when is it happening? I'll just say when is the event happening. So let's assume this is the prompt. I'll click on execute. So I should be able to communicate with the chat like OpenAI, and I should be able to generate the response. It is loading. I hope it's working. So I see 200. Now if I come down, we've got a response. It says that the event is happening on Sunday, February 18th, 5 p.m. Mark your calendar, set your alarms, and maybe even launch a few reminder pigeons, because this is not just any event, it's a mathematical gateway to the future of artificial intelligence. So it is generating the response in a required manner. As you can see, it's responding as per we have configured, and it's responding really well as well. So it's working. So the application that I have deployed just now in my local system, it's working as per my expectation. That's a great thing. Now I have to ensure that my laptop is placed in the production environment. So since practically that's not possible, so whatever that I have in my laptop, I have to ensure the same kind of settings are available in the production environment so that it works well. Okay, so to do that, I'll be creating the Docker container image, we'll package it, and then we'll ship it and we'll deploy it with the help of Kubernetes engine. Okay, so that's what the next steps are. So now that you have seen the local deployment, I'll take a pause here, team. So are you clear till now? So are you clear till now, team? So let me know. So if you have got any question, please feel free to let me know. If you're clear, please confirm by typing as all good. Okay, thank you, Rakshita. Thank you, Dheeraj. Okay, Dheeraj A. Okay, thank you, Lakshmikant. Thank you, Lakshmi. Okay, thank you, Josie. Thank you, Omnia. Thank you, uh, Nabheet. Thank you, Saundarya. Okay, thank you, Dheeraj V. Excellent, guys. So I can see a lot of confirmations now. So that means you are able to follow along. So the current state that we are in right now is we have deployed our application in our local environment. So that's a good thing. Now that we have deployed our application in our local environment, okay, now let's go ahead and mention the settings so that we can go ahead and deploy it on the production too. So let's do that. So let's create a Docker file. So I'll start by creating a Docker file. Okay. So like this Docker file will be very simple. I'll just use the base Python image. Okay. And I'll copy all the files to my working directory. I'll install the requirements with the help of, I'll install everything which I've mentioned, which is basically requirements.txt. I'll create an endpoint, I'll expose it, and I'll go ahead and run this main.py. Okay, that's the basic thing that I will do, which means whatever I did locally, I'm just implementing the same over here inside my Docker file. Okay, once I create this as a Docker image and uh, run this Docker image, it should work perfectly. So let's test that as well. So I'll just launch my Docker. Okay, I'll just stop everything locally. Now, once I've launched the Docker, so what I'll do is I'll say Docker build -t. I'll just tag it as ChatGPT local. I'll mention the version as, let's say, V1. And the context is basically the current folder where my Docker file present. I'll say dot and I'll press the enter key. So this will perform the activity of building my Docker file. Okay. Uh, so let's wait, team. In the meantime, I'm just answering few queries that I've got. So Sarah, I'm sharing you the link. You can access the video from there from start. Okay, so let's check the status. Yeah, the build has been completed. Now that the build is complete, I'll just run the same Docker run. I'll expose the port of 80 to 80. Okay, and the Docker images ChatGPT local v1. So this should run the this should create a Docker container from the image that I've just built, and it should be available on the port 80. So let's do a quick check-in. So I'll just refresh the page since we are using the same port. So I'm able to access it. That's great. Now I'll just say uh, who is let's say, yeah, let's do it one thing. So what will I learn in the event? Let's click on execute. Okay, I'm getting some server error. Let's see what could be the reason. Okay, for some reason I'm getting a server error. Let's do a quick check. Okay, so welcome to ChatGPT powered assistant. Okay, let's see. I'll just see. Okay, it should work. So let's see what is the response. Okay, it says internal server error. It could be because, let me just do a quick check. I think it should have the enough balance. So yeah, let me just quickly check in. So Docker run, okay, ChatGPT local v1. So okay, this is the assistant ID. Everything is working. Let me rerun again and let's see, team. I think I don't think so. It's a major issue, but we'll just see that once. So I've made it 8080. I'll just see, is it correct? Okay. Uh, okay. So one strange thing that I actually observe here is I think I'm not uh, Chat GPT project. Okay, Chat GPT project. So, uh, okay. One thing is strange is my application says uh, ChatGPT powered assistant V1. It looks like it has not got correctly. So let me do one thing. So let me just build the application again. Maybe it has used something else. Okay, just to avoid the confusion, I'll do one thing. I'll just remove everything that I have got with me in my local system, and then I would go ahead and build it again. Okay, I think that is the one that is causing the issue, I believe. Okay, so let's do one thing, team. So let's see. I'll just display our main.python file. Okay, so it's v1, that is clear. So I'll say docker build -t, and I'll say chat GPT demo v1 colon v1 dot. I think let me rebuild again. I feel like it has not taken the correct file version. Okay, now docker run -p will link our ports. Okay, and let's test it. I think this should work fine now. Okay, now let's see whether we are getting the same response in the, I'll just open in the incognito mode. Okay, chat GPT powered assistant. I feel like the V1 is not being considered for some reason. Maybe it is just considering the data, whatever that is present in my local system because of some cache, and there are some other Kubernetes container that's running in my local system. That's the reason that is causing the issue. But it's completely fine, team. So I'm confident that the code that we have mentioned is going to work fine. And basically, this will help me. So with the help of this Docker file that I have created, so this would basically help me to go ahead and run it in the Docker environment. Now the thing is, we should not be running in the Docker environment. We should ensure that this works in the production environment. So in order to implement the same, okay, in order to implement the same, so what we'll be doing is you will be uploading it into the uh, GitHub repository. So for the demonstration and to save time, I've already uploaded a working copy over here into the GitHub repository. The repository where I have uploaded the code, I'll show you team. So I've mentioned the name as ChatGPT CI/CD. And here, if you look into the code, let me just open the folder and show you the contents of this folder. So this contains the complete implementation of the project. So here there's a main.py, okay, which says ChatGPT powered assistant and everything. And there is a Docker file, okay. Now, one thing that I have changed over here is I'm not saving the API secret. I'm just saving the assistant ID. Okay, so for the demonstration purpose, what I'll do is I'll mention the assistant ID that we have created in our session. Okay, the assistant ID that was created in our session is this. This is our assistant ID. Okay, now what I'll do is this is the assistant ID. Now for this assistant ID, we'll modify a few things. Like there is some system info instruction, right? I'll just mention as generate funny response. It's the same code. I'm just modifying some system instruction and I've modified the assistant ID. There is a Docker file present. Now with all these things present, okay, now with all these things present, Now, what I will do is, okay, what I will do is, I'll be using this code which is present in my GitHub repository, and I'll be performing the build using the GitHub action. I'll generate a new container image, okay, and I'll be using that new container image and I'll be deploying it on the Google Kubernetes engine. Okay, so let me log into the Google Kubernetes. So in order to do that, I'll log into my Google Cloud account, and here I'll launch the Kubernetes cluster. So I'll launch the Kubernetes cluster, and I'll just show you what are the things that you need to modify in this file so that you can replicate the same. I'll click on create. I'll keep the default name, which is Autopilot Cluster 1 and US Central 1. So this will create a new Kubernetes cluster. And this will, once this Kubernetes cluster is created, we would go ahead and work with the same. So by the time it creates in the backend, let me show you at a very high level what is happening. So now we are talking about the infrastructure point. So what we will do is we have the local repository. We have hosted on github.com. Now, when I perform any commit, this will build the Docker image. Okay, this will build the Docker image which we have created right here. Okay, now while building this Docker image, so for our application, we have to mention the OpenAI API key, isn't it? So what we will be doing is there is something called as repository secrets. I'm going to mention those repository secrets over here. So under the repository settings, there is something called as the action. So under the uh, uh, secrets and variables, select the action, and I'll be saving the OpenAI API under the secret name of OpenAI API. Just you can go ahead and edit it and mention the value that you would want to mention. Okay. For the demonstration purpose, I'll just go ahead and mention which I had earlier. I think I've lost it. Let me just delete everything and recreate a new one. Okay. I'll create a new one. Okay. I'll delete the old ones. This is just for authentication. I'll update the value and click on update secret. Okay. So once I update it, so it will be using the latest authentication in order for my application to interact with OpenAI. And apart from that, to interact with Google Cloud, so I need to provide the Google project ID, that is GKE project. That's the secret name that I have mentioned. And for this, okay, for this, I have mentioned the project ID, which is basically this. This is my Google Cloud project ID. And then for the key, so you'll have to download the IAMs with the help of your service account. So you can just launch the IAM. Okay, entity and access management, and from here you can click on the service account and you can download the credentials of the service account. So when you say manage keys, and from here just download the file and paste the entire contents of the JSON file. Okay, just paste everything for this GKE SA key. So these are the key three repository secrets that you would maintain. So by maintaining this, you'll get the benefit. One of the key benefit that you would get is you're not storing in the text document, you are storing it uh, in a place which is completely safe. Then the next part of them is like uh, I have used this file, and there is a YAML file that has been created for the Kubernetes. So here, this is the Kubernetes deployment file where whatever the image that gets pushed, so those image, okay, will be considered for my those image will be considered for the deployment. Okay, that is the overall idea of this deploy.yaml file. And to ensure that this happens in an automatic manner, there's a workflow that is configured under the actions.yaml file where everything that I've mentioned right now, that is the workflow one, is considered. Okay, the deployment name, the cluster, the project ID, everything, the step-by-step details is mentioned right here so that the application gets deployed onto our Google Kubernetes cluster so that we can access our application. Let me just show you guys. Okay, so let's check if our Kubernetes cluster creation is completed. So currently the status is being created. Let's wait for a few more minutes. Okay, guys. So in the meantime, so does anyone has any questions till now? So please let me know, team. So I know this deployment part is a little technical, too much technical if you're someone who is not from data science background. So I can see few learners are already requesting to create a specific session on Docker and Kubernetes. Definitely we can do that. So we have created some already, but yeah, we can definitely create few more sessions as well, team. Okay. So any other questions, team, till now? If you're clear, are you very able to follow at a very high level? Please confirm. Thank you, Srijit. Thank you, Samiksha. Thank you, Rakshita. Thank you, Ramya. So how about others? Are you able to follow along, team? Definitely, Josie. Okay, sure, Mohammed. Thank you, Mohammed. Excellent, guys. Thank you so much, team, for your confirmation. Okay, now let's move ahead and let's look into the final part. Okay, let's see. I think the until the cluster is completed, we cannot validate it. Let's wait for a few more seconds. In the meantime, I'll just prepare the file so that we can upload it on the portal. Okay, so there are some learners who are saying that, sir, is it same as is the fast API, is it same as the course that I've joined earlier, that is MLOps Bootcamp? Sridhar says, yes, Sridhar, yeah. If you have followed the MLOps Bootcamp course, yeah, definitely you can say that the core concept of the fast API that I've used in this session, it's actually from there. Like you can say it's like you can say I've taken most of the parts from our course of MLOps Bootcamp and have implemented here. Okay. Okay, we are almost done. Okay, any other questions, team, in the meantime? Any fast API alternative? So you can think about the Flask library, Stravani. You can also check out that library too, Flask. And there are some more questions about Kubernetes. Definitely, Prakash, we can definitely do that. Sure, Ashraf. Okay, guys. So now that this is done, so let's do a quick trial run. Let's see if it works. So what I'll do is, okay, so the code that we have seen earlier, I'll just perform the commit. Okay, I'll quickly perform the commit. Okay, let me just bring up the repository that uh, I've got. Let me go to the place where I have the repository that I was showing earlier present. Okay, it's author repo. Yeah, now I'll just perform the commit. Git add dot git commit hyphen m class. Okay, I'll just say git push origin main. Let's perform the push. Now, once that is done, so it should automatically start the action for our repository. So we can see that the action is in progress. That's great. So it's running everything in backend. And what I would expect is, so the uh, like yeah, so it should we have to build a Docker image, and that Docker image should be pushed to the Google Container Registry. Okay, once it is pushed to the Google Container Registry for the gcr.io, so we should be able to see an image here. Once it is pushed, that image will be used by the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, that's the overall expectation. See, currently it is performing the build. Okay, now it is pushed. So let me go ahead and refresh the page. See, I've pushed that image chat GPT over here to my Google Container Registry, and we should be able to see the latest version. This is the latest version that has been updated, created just now, and this has been used. Okay, this has been used. This will be used for our Kubernetes cluster. That's what I would expect. So let's check. Okay, even this container is also ready. In the meantime, I'll also try to connect to this container, the Kubernetes cluster, not container. Okay, so this is logging in. I'll say kubectl get pods hyphen o wide. Oh, it's a wrong command. Okay, that's fine. So we can see that the pods are being created, and in the backend, it will also create the service kubectl get service. So we can see that the service is also going to get created. It will take some time for the load balancer to get created. And once the load balancer is created, we can access our ChatGPT application by referring to that link, guys. So that's the best part of deployment. So guys, as part of your learning journey in today's session, so you have actually seen practically how you can build the production grade AI application using the GPT models, like here in this case, the OpenAI Chat GPT model that we have used, and how to follow the best practices to implement it in the production environment, how to implement the automation using the MLOps and LLMOps principles, and use the various industry standard tools such as GitHub Action to store the secrets, and also go ahead and containerize it and create it as a Kubernetes cluster. So all these things you have learned in detail as part of a learning journey today, guys. So I want to thank you each and every one of you guys for being so interactive. Now I want to know from you guys, did you find this session helpful? So let me know what you think, team, because it's very important for me to know about what you think. And if you have got any feedback for the session, please do let me know. So we'll incorporate it in our future sessions so that you get the most of this webinar that we are conducting. Okay. Ramya says, sir, it was really good. Uh, I'm excited now. Okay. Thank you, Ramya. Thank you so much. Okay, Radhika, I'm glad that I joined the session. Okay, I'm glad too, Radhika. Thank you so much for asking some amazing questions throughout the session. Okay, Prakash. Thank you, Prakash. Thank you, Kant. Thank you, Shravani. Okay. So how about others? What do you think, team? Anything that you want me to change or anything that any suggestions? Do let me know. Okay, Samyukta says, sir, no, nothing, sir. I think you are the best. Okay, thank you, Samyukta. I'm glad that you found my way of teaching as helpful. Okay, thank you, Sridhara. Okay, thank you so much, Lakshman. Okay, thank you. Okay, sure, that's great, Lakshmi. Sure, definitely we can do that in the next session. At least we'll plan it. Okay, thank you so much, Dheeraj. Okay, so folks, I've got an announcement to make. So if you have liked the webinar session that we are conducting, so one request from my side is like if you're in LinkedIn, follow me on LinkedIn and follow the page of Manifold AI Learning so that you can get the session update whenever we are conducting. So we are planning to conduct at least every 2 weeks or every once. So every once every week. So by staying connected on LinkedIn and other media platforms, you get to have the latest announcement and you can join these workshops and get the most of your learning from the learning journey. And I've also again shared you the link where you can access the content of this today's session. I'll be uploading the source code as well as the session's recording within 24 hours. The team will be uploading over there and you'll be able to access it, guys. Okay, so thank you so much again, team, for joining in. And I've got some more requests from learners about the MLOps course. Okay, so team, I think there were few learners asking about the like how to work with Git, how to work with the Docker file, and some learners were asking a question of fast API. So since I had quoted once that okay, some of them are actually from our course that we have got, that's the MLOps. Yeah, I would recommend this course if you're very new to MLOps and want to learn in deep about the MLOps. I would highly recommend you this course. So you can check out from our site. I'm sharing the link over here in the chat window. So you can apply the coupon code of heart to get 15% off on the prices that you see on the portal. So make the most of this offer. And I look forward to seeing you on the class one. Some of the key benefits that you would get by joining here with Manifold AI Learning is so you'll be getting the response from the instructor directly, that is me, within 48 hours. If you come across any issues, the coding issues or anything, you get the assistance and your specific queries, if it is not answered through the Q&A, so it will be answered through our webinar sessions. So we'll be having a separate slot for the Manifold AI Learning students to have a special uh, like Q&A session for the webinar and the most specifically the course attendees. So you get to have those benefit. So I look forward to seeing you on our session, guys. And more importantly, follow us on our social media channels so that you get the most of the upcoming sessions that we are conducting. And thank you so much again, guys. And don't forget to join the tomorrow session. The tomorrow session is about the mathematics for AI, some of the key things that you have to focus on, the key concepts from mathematics that you need to be aware of. So I would highly recommend you to join that session. You can get the most and learn about the same. Okay, thank you so much, team. So I'll be stopping the stream now. And in case if you've got any question, okay, so you can join the webinar link. since I'll be stopping the stream, this I'll be keeping only my webinar open only for the learners of Manifold AI Learning. If anyone has any question, you can just join that link and ask me over there. Okay, I'll be there for another 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, thank you so much, guys, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you, Josie. Thank you, Lakshmi. Okay, thanks a lot, team.